Hey, everybody. Welcome, and thank you for coming back. Second day of Zoomtopia. Hope you had a good time at the keynote. You may be surprised to know that when astronauts tweet from space, they're actually using VDI. They're using Citrix Zen Desktop. Maybe not all the time, but they certainly did for the first one. So I'm Simon Booth. I'm a solution architect. This is Nishta. She's our demo specialist, and she's going to help me out today. What are we here to talk about? So hopefully you're all here to talk and listen about VDI. Quick survey. I'd like to know from the room, who here has VDI deployed in their environment? That's a good show of hands. Keep your hands raised, please. OK. Put your hand down. Or keep your hand raised if you have more than 1,000 seats deployed. OK, if your hands went down, more than 10,000 seats deployed. OK, so a few hands still up. 100,000? Anybody? Oh, you didn't show up. All right. Oh, yes, go on. OK. All right. Thank you for coming. We're very grateful. So you can see that VDI spans the gamut, and different customers choose to go down the VDI route or rabbit hole for various reasons. And I'll go into a few of those and show you what we've done to address this use case. Data security is a huge one. I'm sure there's a lot of financial institutions here who are doing it to keep their customers' data closely controlled and within their four walls. Same thing in healthcare, very common use cases. Roaming and the ability to provide a very consistent experience. So retail banking, travel, those kind of things where you want to provide a very consistent desktop experience at massive scale, particularly with employees that might not have their own device. So they might be shift workers. They might be coming in different days of the week. So they're able to share hardware but keep a personalized desktop. And finally, legacy applications is a huge thing today, where we've got to keep maintaining some of those old applications that only run on Windows XP or Windows 7, and need to keep those things around for a while while moving forward to more modern applications. So I'm going to start with a quick demo. I'm on my Windows laptop. So I'm going to quickly show you our VMware Windows on Windows. So I'm going to flip to the Horizons client. OK, and our nice familiar Zoom client. So this is the VDI client, and it's running in conjunction with the plugin that's running on my thin client, which is my laptop. So I'm going to go ahead and join our meeting. And here's one I prepared earlier. So when we see video, and we'll go into a little bit more detail on this as we go through the various demos, and I've got a slide, the video that you're seeing is being rendered by the plugin on my laptop. The rest of it, everything else that we see as we go through the demos, is rendered in the virtual desktop. So everything works. Everything is here. VMware behaves a little differently, so I wanted to show you this here. And you can see as I move the window, there's a little bit of magic goes on here, and the video slowly follows it around. We'll see a little bit more about why that happens later. So I'm going to go ahead and join the meeting. And I'm not going to join any audio today because of the potential for feedback in this room with a whole bunch of endpoints. OK. So here's our first one in the demo. Are you seeing video, by the way?
Yes.
You are. OK, we're not seeing yours, but that's OK. So let me pin mine. All right, so basically, video rendering of the thing. This is the VMware one, and we'll come back and we'll show some Citrix ones in a moment. So let me switch back to my presentation. Oops. Okay, so what's going on here? So as I said, there's some magic going on. So we have a few different ways of working, and all of this is totally automatic, so there's nothing that you need to do as you're deploying this. We have a single client for all VDI types of deployment, whether it's supported or not supported. If you have a VDI environment, you need to use our client for VDI, not our regular desktop client. So even in an environment that doesn't have a supported plugin, I'll talk about what those are later on, it will still work, and we've done some optimization, like reducing the number of streams and stuff like that, reducing the frame rate to put as least load as possible on the host. And that's our top layer. So worst case scenario, we don't have any optimization. The second thing we can do is we can offload the media encoding and decoding. So this is what we saw, or partially what we saw here, where we're drawing the video and we're overlaying them magically in the right place. If a pop-up comes up to prompt for a recording approval, something like that, we cut a hole in the video and we see the UI through it. So there's lots of magic goes along on making that happen. But in this second scenario, this is assuming, for example, you had a restricted network where the thin client can only talk to its host. And all of the traffic, the network traffic, will be channeled back through the connection that's provided by the virtual desktop infrastructure. The third layer is our preferred and most optimal scenario, where all of that media that we're doing locally on the thin client gets sent directly to the cloud. And here's a little bit more detail on what's going on. So this is that third scenario here, where we've got the Zoom cloud. We establish some connections directly to the cloud, probe if we can get there. For example, if you have split tunneling, then the thin client, if they're at home, they'll be using the local internet connection to send media, but all of the security, single sign-on, all of the UI, all of that stuff is done through the virtual desktop. We will also try to bypass the connection channels. So in the case of Citrix ICA or PCOIP, we'll try and bypass that. So if we can establish a connection directly from that thin client plugin to the server, we'll also try to do that, because that's more optimal for us than going through the channel. All right, so we're going to flip to this demo. I'm going to try and reconnect that headset. Can I? Okay.
Because I think my video is turned on.
Yeah. So I'm going to come back and tell you what this is, but bear with me. So, leave meeting. Leave meeting. Navigate home. My programs. Zoom. End. Leave meeting. Leave meeting. Join the meeting.
It's like having a third eye.
You just go 315 744 3293. Close keyboard. Join meeting. Okay. Okay. Plan B. Okay. This is the live demo. So we are going to show you, using the camera, what Nishta's going to do. So Nishta's going to log in. We have two workstations over here. So the first workstation, this is HP ThinOS, running Citrix Zen Desktop, and we're going to be logging into our Windows 10 Thin client. So let me just tether this guy. Okay. Oh. Okay.
So I'm just going to join this meeting through the Thin client. We already have the meeting ID up and running, and we're not going to connect to audio. There we go.
Okay, great, and you can make that full screen. Okay, and this is exactly the same thing. So this is just the only difference here with what I showed you over here is that this is an embedded client. It's running ThinOS, which is a Linux flavor. And again, it's the same thing with that video overlay going on. So we'll come back to that and do some more scenarios as we build the demo up. So a little bit of a comparison here in terms of features, what you can expect to work and work well, better, best in terms of our performance and expected feature set. So the middle column here is our regular desktop client if it was running on a regular desktop. As I said, you really shouldn't try to run the regular desktop client in a VDI session at all. Use the VDI one. So just for comparison purposes, obviously, as you know, we can do up to 49 visible participants in a meeting at once on the regular client. We ramp that down in VDI to 9, so a 3x3. I've also included the web client here for some use cases. Customers are considering using the web client as an alternative to the VDI client, so it's just here for comparison purposes, and that would be one active speaker on the web client today. Video resolution, we do up to 1080p on desktop client. On VDI, it really depends. So it can go up to 1080p if you're on a high-end device. There's no cap on it. But in reality, most of the VDI environments that we find ourselves on are dual core or something lower powered, or they're running in low power mode, or it's purposefully ramped down. And typically, we see 360p per participant. So obviously, that's per video stream. So in a multi-stream, it would be, overall pretty good anyway. So no one's really going to notice, but that's what it is. Recording, this is kind of obvious. It's kind of just because of the way it works. We don't want to save any local files on the thin client, so we don't. Virtual background, obviously that's a great feature. I use it myself all the time on desktop. We don't support that natively in VDI or on web, but we have done a little testing with third-party apps that can do that. So that's definitely something that we can talk to you about if that's an important part of your use case, like in data center, in contact center and things like that. Application sharing, obviously we have a plethora of options when we've got full control of the hardware. So things like AirPlay, we can do audio, all of those things. A little bit limited in terms of what we can do through a thin client, so we are limited to desktop, applications, and whiteboarding. And we're continuing to make a lot of progress on improving the optimization of that, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. Zoom Phone is supported on both the desktop client and on the meetings client. And again, I'll talk a little bit more about Zoom Phone as we go. So all of the things that we have today, so we recently just released, a couple of months ago, our latest release in July. That was our kind of big bang release for VDI. It's now basically a fully supported product. You can find it on our support pages. You can find all of the downloads. We've put a reasonable amount of effort into making that easy. Definitely welcome feedback if we can make that easier to navigate all the different combinations of downloads, but hopefully we're getting there. As you can see, we've got the hardware endpoints supported today. We are adding more hardware endpoints as we go. Obviously, that's just a testing thing and working with each of those vendors to certify and get those on board. And VMware, as I showed you. So what are we working on next? So one of the things that we do that's kind of special about VDI is that we do trail the regular desktop client by a few months, so typically a quarter. So every time we do a release of VDI, we're basically getting all of the UI updates that came onto the client approximately 3 months ago. So obviously we had a huge update at the beginning of the year in January, and that was part of the July release when we changed our client look and feel, and we'll continue to do that. As I said, we're going to be working on the optimization of the desktop sharing. We have offloaded it already on Windows, on Citrix. We're going to be and when I say offloading, it means basically that diagram that I showed you, moving stuff from the left to the right. So currently, desktop sharing outside of Windows on Windows is still done on the virtual desktop. Zoom Phone optimization. So we have Zoom Phone support today, which works great if you have a good network connection. It'll use the audio devices provided by the Citrix or VMware infrastructure. And we are looking at moving the audio stack for Zoom Phone also onto the thin client side. So that's kind of next on the docket. And also adding the VMware support onto the hardware devices. Kind of out there a little bit further, I'm not giving specific dates, but definitely talk to me if you want to know what those dates are, and we'll make sure you're under NDA and talk to you about dates. Mac is definitely on our radar. We see a lot of, particularly with home workers, scenarios, so we're working on Mac, and also Windows Virtual Desktop in Azure is something that we're starting work on now. So, all right, so we're going to go to our final demo. So if you want to go into SamWin 7, yeah, that one, the left, yeah, first one. And I'll do my thing here.
We're having more technical issues.
Okay.
We're having technical issues.
Technical difficulties.
I can
Try refreshing the whole thing first.
Okay.
It's probably signed out.
again. No, I did sign.
Okay, last chance. This is why we had 3 demos, so we had 3 chances. All right, we're going to cut forward. So actually, while we're here, let's do a little bit of desktop sharing, because we were going to kind of have more participants in, but believe me, Elux works great. All right, so we're just going to start whiteboarding here, do a little share, and then obviously you can see it coming up there on the VMware horizons over there, and Citrix over here, and many, many combinations of different scenarios. So. And this is stuff you know, right, because you're all Zoom users and you're super used to what we can do. So one thing that is interesting, I'm just going to, while I'm in here, get out of this thing. So one thing I did just want to show you while we're in here, and I can come back to this in Q&A if you guys want, but for the geeks in the room that want to see stuff. Okay, so right now, so this is the task manager on our, inside our virtual desktop. We were, when because it was kind of catching up with that collaboration session. If Nishta stops, oh, you did stop sharing, so it went down. So if you start sharing again, we'll see that go up to about 10% while sharing. When not sharing, it's pretty much 0. It's flatlined. So we've done a lot of work, and one particular customer we're very appreciative of for all of the testing that they've done. And they've given us a lot of feedback and really pushed us hard to get the ratio of CPU usage on the thin client, CPU usage on the virtual desktop kind of balanced, and also to significantly reduce CPU on the thin client. So we've done a lot of work, really kind of both customize it for them, and then as we've gone along through that process, also making some of those things configurable and putting some intelligence into that so that it can operate in a variety of environments. So yes, if you stop again, we'll see that dip down from at 8%. It'll go down to 0 again. All right. Okay, so I just want to tell you about the demos. The beautiful headset that really works great and normally works awesome.
It was because you guys entered the room. But
it was.
We were fine.
So I just want to tell you a little bit about our setup here. So our virtual infrastructure is in our data center, so it's on our LAN. We are VPN'd in over the LAN, sharing the VPN from my laptop, which is connected over Wi-Fi. So all of these devices are over VPN, over Wi-Fi, over the conference center network. So not ideal scenario, but it worked pretty well considering. Yeah, so that's what we got. So the RealWare HMT device that's running our Android mobile clients We're working with them to optimize that for manufacturing, that kind of stuff. So I just wanted to kind of have that out there. And obviously, we've been using the Zoom meeting client for our document camera content sharing scenario. We do that all the time. In fact, we had a staff magic show the other week, and one of the shows had a magician with the Zoom client being used to kind of show the cards. It was really cool. So that's
without
kind of
losing your host view.
Yes.
So
yes.
cameras at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. So that's just a little bit about what we've been going on here. So again, really appreciative for you guys coming. We're going to go into some Q&A. I've got lots of time for Q&A because I figured you guys would have lots of questions. If you do have any specific questions, the best place to start is go to support.zoom.us, put in the keyword VDI, and it will bring up exactly these things, plus more stuff as we find it. We have a getting started guide that's got all of the downloads. It is a little complicated, as you guys know, because you're in the VDI world. So getting the right combination of plugins for the right environments is the complicated part. We do have one single installer for the desktop. So the virtual desktop, single installer for everything, whether it's VDI, for Citrix, or for VMware. It's the same installer or nothing. Just use that one. That's the one you want to install on desktop. So if you go with one message only, use that for VDI. And there's just one of them. And we renamed it, so it's actually the correct name now. So, OK, so that's it. So let's take some questions. Who wants to?
Gentleman over here had a question earlier.
Yep. And if you can go to the mic, that would be helpful. So.
Can we take this to him?
Yeah.
So we had tested Zoom VDI back earlier in the year, limitedly, and had a lot of problems bandwidth related. So choppy video, choppy audio, back and forth. I'm glad to see that there's been some headway made on this. But regarding sharing the desktop client, so a help desk support technician wants to remote in, VNC, Zoom in, would that work through the VDI solution?
It does. So the current, so there's two different scenarios, right? So as I said, today we have support if you are using Citrix Windows thin client connected to, obviously, a Citrix environment.
Right.
If that's the scenario, then the person who is presenting their desktop, that presentation, the rendering of it, the encoding is going to happen on the desktop, in the virtual desktop, but all of the recipients will be receiving it optimized and offloaded onto the thin client. So that was a difference in July. So if you tried it before July and you're in that situation that's Windows on Citrix, then it's going to be way, way better. In any case, it's better because we've done a lot of work for desktop sharing and whiteboarding and made them more CPU and bandwidth optimized. So try it again. If you're on VMware or you're on hardware thin clients, it's coming soon. So hopefully in the next release. So in the next, certainly before the end of the year.
All right, thank you. And then just one more follow-up question on sharing. During our full staff meetings, monthly basis, there's a lot of times we show a YouTube clip and live video.
Yep.
Is the VDI optimized at this point for live streaming?
It will be with the offloaded. So again, if it's the Windows Citrix thin clients, they will get a great experience, especially if the person, and I would recommend that the person who's presenting the content use a regular desktop client, especially for an all hands. So if you're doing a large meeting all hands and you want the best possible experience, use the native desktop clients on Windows or Mac to be the presenter. And that will put the best possible quality into the meeting. And then for the people receiving it, the ones who are optimized will get a great experience with full audio and video as you'd expect from a regular desktop client. The people who are on VDI will get lower frame rate and lower resolution.
All right. Thank you so much.
Yeah. All right, who's next? Anybody? No more questions?
Yeah, I've got a couple.
Oh.
In one of your slides, you mentioned PCOIP. Do you have any support for VMware Blast Protocol?
Yes, it's somewhat agnostic to the protocol. So we kind of sit on top of the SDK and support both. We are also working with Teradici on the hardware endpoints. which covers a few more additional use cases for other providers like AWS and stuff.
Okay.
So, yes.
And then you make reference to running on the native thin client, and that's a Windows embedded thin client. But you also made reference to ThinOS, the Linux flavor.
Yep.
Does the Zoom VDI app, does it take the resources locally and govern those local resources versus the virtualized desktop, or is that configuration or installation within that local thin client? And the reason I ask is because what I didn't hear mentioned too, we're running VMware Horizon, but we're serving things up through a Radish environment. So remote app, remote stacks, and not instant clones or full-blown desktops presented. They're in a hosted environment. So with the VDI, the Zoom VDI app,
Sorry,
Go.
excuse me.
that's okay.
Sorry.
With the
Bless you.
Zoom VDI app, govern the use of those local thin client resources without any configuration required.
Yes and no. So you can configure it to do more, like fine-grained control. But if we just, let me flip back to that thing here. Okay, can you hold it while I?
Yeah.
All right. Sorry. So I'm just going to exit from the thing. So I don't know if you guys can see, but there's basically on the thin client itself. So this is within the ThinOS environment. We're actually running our plugin, and that's the thing that's kind of integrated with the ThinOS, like Linux OS, right? That's doing that governing and figuring out what resources it has, if the ThinOS is in scale back mode, what kind of processors it's got, all of those things. And so it's the one deciding how much resolution, what frame rate, all of those things. So that's all being done locally on the thin client itself, and that's installed, depending which environment it is, that's either a package or it comes from the vendor or it comes with the OS and all of those things. Yeah. Thanks. All right, any more questions? Really? Wow. Okay.
You got a
Well,
smart crowd.
yeah. Okay.
Can you
Yeah.
speak to Zoom Phone a little bit on, we have situations where we have an agent population that's handling contact center while they may also be in a Zoom meeting collaborating at the same time. Is there optimization for that?
Yeah, so the question was, can I elaborate on Zoom Phone, particularly in a contact center environment where agents might be on the phone and in meetings at different times. So right now, the Zoom Phone portion is not optimized. So that diagram, which I like my diagram. So the Zoom Phone is still on the left of the diagram. Meetings is on the right. So we're working on moving Zoom Phone to the right. So depending, in a contact center environment, it's probably going to be okay, because the assumption is that in a contact center, you're going to have a good network, you're going to have enough resources. Zoom Phone's not particularly resource intensive compared to video for meetings. So you're probably going to be fine, and you're probably going to have a great experience. I think the more challenging environments are things like home workers that might be accessing their VDI over a VPN, trying to do Zoom Phone. That's a little bit more challenging.
Yeah, which we have tens of thousands.
Yeah.
So right now we send all audio outside the VDI.
Yes.
So I'm looking for a way to bring it into the VDI for phone.
You want it in the you want the audio
In the VDI.
in the VDI? Well, that's the way it is now, so you're fine.
Well, we
But-
don't do it today. What I'm saying is I want to bring it there.
But you want the control of it, or you want the actual audio stream? Okay, well, the audio stream is already in the VDI, and you'll be able to choose to leave it there. It'll just automatically stay there. But if you wanted it to be not in the VDI and be hosted locally or go directly from the thin client to the cloud, then that's what's coming later. Yeah. Thanks. Okay. Then if there's any more questions. Oh, yeah.
You optimize the phone for thin clients. Would that include add-ins such as Five9 and stuff like that?
So the question was, will it include marketplace apps like Five9? Probably, yes. Yeah, so really the only special thing about VDI is the optimization kit or the optimization plugin, right? So everything else that's part of the Zoom client works as normally, with the caveat that it's trailing the regular client by 3 months or so. So if you're using an integration that relies on features that just came out, then you're going to have to wait 3 months before you get those features. But in general, all of the features that are available in the Zoom client will come, and so they're kind of independent, I guess, is the answer. Does that answer the question? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yes.
I know you kind of showed with thin clients with Windows embedded. Have you done any testing on any zero clients that does not have any Windows embedded?
So there's a subtle difference between a zero client and a thin client. So these are not Windows embedded. This is ThinOS Linux, and this is Elux Linux. And so the question was, do we support zero client? No. So the zero client behaves quite differently in that it's using the chipset, the actual silicon, is doing the decoding. And we can't really do anything more than the zero client is already doing. What we are doing is testing that scenario. So as I said, we're working with Teradici to do that testing and make that as good as we can, and at least be aware that we're working in that environment and do the right tweaks that we can do on the desktop side to work well with that environment. Yep. Any more? Yes, sir.
I would assume if we're not using a thin client, we're using a thick client to access our VMware, that we would expect to see close to the same performance that we see on the normal desktop client environments that before the default would have happened. Do we expect to see good performance there? The same as you see on like a desktop client?
So the question was, Gotcha. So yeah, so the question was a thin client versus a regular laptop or regular desktop grade hardware to access a VMware. And that's exactly what I'm doing here. So yes, pretty much. So like I said in that table, that's when you would expect to get 720p, 1080p performance from that device, assuming that the rest of the participants in the meeting are requesting it. So like in this environment where all of my endpoints are all VDI endpoints, they're all just doing 360p because these guys are kind of the lowest common denominator. But if you had a bunch of thicker thin clients, then yeah, they're gonna perform essentially from a video perspective. They're gonna perform as well as the desktop client. Yep. It's this, and it's the same engine, right? So the two things are exactly the same engine running both on the. Exactly right. So the comment was that they plug in scales with the hardware, and that's exactly right. Yep. Okay. Well. Okay.
Mobile devices, are you going to support like iPadOS?
So the question was mobile devices, specifically iOS. Yes, if there's demand. So let us know if that's a use case in your environment. We're very much customer driven. So if that's something that's important to you, then we'll get that on the roadmap and work on it. Figure it out if it's possible. If it's technically possible and the APIs support it, then we'll do it. But that's really one of our kind of governing factors in terms of what we can do on some of the platforms. So, but yeah. Any more? Going once. Going twice. Okay. All right. Well, thank you again. Enjoy the rest of your day.